Episode number 123 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Have you ever heard of the term, there's an app for that? Well, if you've gone through fertility treatments in the past few years and looked for an app to help you, you may have realized for this problem, there was no app. And that's the realization that Ravid, the founder of Embie, came to as she went through what began as fertility preservation, but turned into full-on fertility treatments. As a self-proclaimed type A personality, Ravid started tracking all things related to her fertility and treatments in Excel, her phone's calendar, and traditional trying to conceive apps. She quickly noticed some patterns as she started comparing her cycles and began advocating for changes to her protocol. The result was better quality eggs and higher fertilization rates. She knew right then and there that other women needed this information as well, and Embie was conceived. Ravid's fertility journey began in 2012 with a cervical cancer diagnosis, followed by severe endometriosis and an MTHFR gene mutation diagnosis. This prompted a move abroad for more affordable reproductive care, which was followed by 6 full IVF cycles, 4 transfers, and a lot of experimentation. After 5 IVF cycle attempts with a partner, Ravid succeeded on her SMBC first donor cycle, which resulted in the birth of her son in November of 2020. So welcome to the podcast, Ravid.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So I'd love for you to give us a bit about your journey. It's been quite a journey for you and how you were inspired to create the app Embie.
Yeah, so yes, it's been a pretty long journey for me. I'd say infertility really started for me in the back of my mind, not necessarily diagnosed in 2012. I got diagnosed with cervical cancer. And so kind of that pressure started of, when are you going to have kids? Because if this cancer comes back, you might lose your ability to carry. So there was this big pressure, but unknown to me and the doctors at the time, I also had endometriosis growing and fibroids, and I ended up a few years after that, when I was 35, deciding to freeze my eggs because I still hadn't found that one. And I thought I was creating a backup plan, but quickly learned that my plan B was plan A, and that I would need IVF in order to conceive, and likely multiple rounds. So I actually moved abroad. I moved to Israel in order to have treatments. And the short story is I did 5 IVF cycles with a partner, and then I did 1 by myself as a single mom by choice with a sperm donor. And on my first try alone, I did end up getting pregnant and now have a 15-week-old Kobe. And I have a happy ending, and through this journey, I really realized that there was support that was missing for women when it came to trying to conceive naturally. There were so many options when it came to apps and communities. But when it came to infertility, we kind of got the short end of the stick. We would have these corners of these applications or these websites that were, here, you can have a discussion about infertility here as a part of the whole thing, but there wasn't anything that was really dedicated to us. So if you were on message boards about trying to conceive, you were triggered by women who were getting pregnant their first month. They weren't having the same conversation as us, and they weren't able to help us track the things that are important to us, which is so many different appointments and medications and labs and just our entire diagnosis. That's a part of like this journey for us. So I created it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what were like the key points or things that you wish you would have had going through this?
So I'm somewhat of a type A personality. I created a Excel sheet even for my first like egg freezing cycle, where I kept track of everything, how many shots I was taking, my dosages, my labs at every single appointment, and I was trying to really by cycle 3 I was seeing kind of a pattern of what was going on, like which medication was I reacting to, which one I wasn't. And I was keeping track of things in different places. My symptoms was in my normal trying to conceive apps, my appointments was in my Google Calendar and reminders. And so I really thought that if I had all of this information in one place that looked pretty, that gave me some cute graphs, that it would make things a lot easier for me. And so the idea was that while it'll help me in the day of keeping just like some sort of control during this process and putting in my information and being able to visualize everything and get reminders and all of those things, maybe if I'm able, it was almost selfish, like maybe if I can get a whole bunch of women to put the same type of information in, then I can figure out how to treat me, because it took me 6 cycles to get pregnant, and I didn't have embryos to freeze every time. And every doctor that I went to 6 different opinions. They gave me 6 different opinions, even though I
Yeah.
had the same diagnosis. And so what if I can get thousands of women to give me their information, and then I can really see an algorithm, a trend, a pattern of a woman with endometriosis with this age, she can get pregnant when she does this specific protocol, or at least this is the most successful one. There are things that are in common here. And I know every woman is different, but when you take thousands and thousands of information, you can really create an intelligent algorithm that can give you that information. And so that's the mission, to eventually be able to say, here's what we recommend for you, and it's going to help you get pregnant 2 or 3 times faster.
Right. And then are you going to be able to do a study of some sort through the app?
Yeah, so we are working on getting a couple of studies done now with some local universities in Israel, as well as one of the top 5 hospitals in the world. And so this is information that's really interesting to a lot of people, because there's also the part of how do we prevent the infertility, right? What are some of the markers and the things that we can get ahead of that, or diagnosis? Like I have a theory, I don't know this yet, but like that women with endometriosis have autoimmune issues, right? And so because your blood is clotting literally to create these adhesions and these
Right.
things, and so doesn't that make sense that you have some sort of blood clotting or autoimmune issue that's causing that, the inflammation and everything else that's around it? And I've noticed that there are markers like MTHFR that are connected with a lot of women that have endometriosis. So those are the things that we're trying to connect, that if you get an autoimmune type of protocol with your IVF, maybe for patients who have endometriosis, they can be more successful sooner, because they integrate
Right.
that autoimmune, where that's not a big part of IVF currently. It's something that's being researched.
And so, what do you look at, or what do you at least address when it comes to certain types of issues or conditions that are contributing to fertility challenges?
So right now, as a part of the app, we have a onboarding diagnosis. So you tell us how you got here, right? And we have over 20 sets of, not 20, 200 sets of questions that we
Oh,
could be
wow.
asking you based on how you answer things. So it'll know that if you said, okay, endometriosis, so how did it get diagnosed? Do you have your CA 125? Did you take the receptiva test? Like all these different markers that we can start putting together, and then seeing the trend between women. And then that way, like this is where we are now at 3 months, right? We're taking in all of this information. This next level will be able to say, hey, we noticed you didn't test for this, but it's common with women with similar diagnosis. You should get tested for this, because it can change how you move forward. And then
That's interesting.
the third thing would be, okay, here now we have these thousands of women. Currently, we have 4,300 as of this morning, women who have given us this information. And so when we get into the tens of thousands, then we can really start creating an AI, which is what we're working on now, to be able to say, here are for your diagnosis the protocols that are working. Here's what you should be seeing as far as like your egg counts and your maturation rate and your fertilization rate, and here's how we can make it better. So really creating that recommendation tool for you so that you can advocate for yourself and you can go to your clinic and say, here's some information that you may not have.
And what types of recommendations are they?
So, I mean, there's for instance, there's a lot of people that believe a long-term protocol. A long protocol is good for endometriosis, or doing down regulation is good if you have those inflammatory markers, whether it's endo or something else, or that a short protocol is PCOS. So let's take what's in the literature and see whether it actually matches up to the real life women. Because what's happening now is most clinics are just at first they're just giving you that same antagonist protocol in the beginning. You're going to take birth control pills, you're going to do 12 days of stimulation, you're going to get that FSH, they're going to add the LH, you get the trigger, and then they see what happens. And then based on what happens, they may then tweak your second protocol. And so we want you to start with a protocol that's going to be the best for you. And so that's what we're working on at the moment.
And what about supplements?
So we're also taking that. Yeah. So we're taking in a few things that are not a part of your regular clinical information. So we're taking, which supplements are you taking? Are you taking herbs? Are you doing acupuncture? Are you doing reflexology? Are you doing fertility massages? What are the other things? Are you doing yoga? Like, what are the other things, the holistic things that you're doing around your fertility journey that can also be markers for success? We're taking all that information.
That's very interesting. That's really cool. And so you basically get people's information. So there's different parts to this. You get people's information through a series of questions, and then you, based on that, give them markers or at least ideas of what they could do or what they can ask their doctors. So it empowers them on the level of what to ask. Because a lot of times people don't know. They have no idea. And they're blindly just going to a doctor and asking them to tell them. But like you said, 6 different doctors, 6 different opinions. So yeah, it's really important that women actually come in armed with information to know what the statistics are really and what the connections are between different types of conditions.
Yes, and so today what we've got is something that's able to give you a practical tool to enter your medication and get reminders and your appointments and your labs and all of those things. And then what that will be in the next 12 months is the goal, is to be able to give you those numbers and those recommendations based on, cloud sourcing of the information from all of these other women. So for me, for instance, there was menopause is usually not given as the only drug in a protocol. And for me, every time I took it later on in my cycle, I would see there'd be this huge jump in follicles, this huge jump in how they were growing. And so my last protocol that I did, I went in there and I was like, this is what I want based on the information that I had. And it took me 3 doctors to get somebody to say, okay, we'll do it your way, and I'm going to add this one other thing. And that's what ended up working. And so what if we all had the power to go and do that and work with our doctors in a way where it is data driven. It is about the science. It is going and looking back at the literature, as well as all of these other women. And so if the doctor is open and willing to work with you in that kind of way, then that they're the right doctor for you. Because there are a lot of times where totally. No, this is my thing. You don't really get to be a part of that decision making, but we should be, because especially in the US, you're paying thousands of dollars to have these treatments. And so you should have a say in what your treatments look like.
Yeah, totally, 100%. And it should be a partnership. It shouldn't be like kind of talking at you. And a lot of times, people kind of get a gut feeling, and then they go somewhere else, and they themselves discover things, not just solely the doctor. And so it's really important to have a say, because ultimately you're the only person in your body. And it's interesting that you said, you kind of figured out what worked for you after like multiple rounds, and you noticed that that actually brought about a better outcome.
Yeah, and it's what I really noticed online when I was there back when we were doing message boards, and now even on Instagram when I'm there, or Facebook, a lot of women are comparing their information, right? They're saying, this is my estrogen levels and my progesterone, and these are how many follicles I have, and this is my protocol, and they're comparing it to each other. But a lot of the information that they don't understand is like, depending on where you live, depending on the lab that you're using,
True.
there's different
Yeah.
measurements types, there's different units, and we're not comparing apples to apples here. And so that was another big part of the motivation, was like, let's put this information in the system, we'll switch that out for you, and you can say, and now you're more aware, like, wait, this is, I'm using a UI, or I'm using an ML, and so we're not talking about the same things here. And I
Yeah.
have this completely different diagnosis than you, I shouldn't be comparing myself to you at all.
Yeah, and that does happen a lot. It actually does. Or it happens even without that information, and message boards in general. Like, oh, you ate this and it helped you get pregnant. Okay, or you took this supplement, and it really is not a one size fits all at all when it
Yeah,
comes to fertility.
exactly. And so I really want to empower women that it's okay to compare, but let's compare the right type of information with the right type of
Yeah,
diagnosis, so that we can really empower you to make the best medical decisions for yourself.
definitely. And so let's talk about the community aspect of MB app. So you guys have a community message boards as well.
Yes, we do. So we, every week or every other week, we have a professional that comes on, that's either an MD, an RE, an embryologist, that they answer questions. So we have an AMA for that, and then also you're able to support each other through your cycles, or if you're going through something specific, you can ask the questions. We also have a big resource section, so that you can. Some people who are going through their first time of IVF, they don't know what to expect next. What are the steps? And so it really walks you through that. It walks you through diagnosis and questions that you should be asking your doctor about testing, because a lot of the time we're not getting all of the testing that we should be getting from the very beginning. We kind of just
Yeah.
jump into it, and it's because there's this big like hurry up and wait thing with fertility treatments, where, hey, if you're infertile and you're running out of eggs, you got to do this now. But really, if you take a
Right.
step back, and you might even be able to take 3 months and improve your situation, if you don't jump into it right away. And then that's also going to save you a lot of heartache and money, and everything else
Right.
that's around there. So we want to make sure that the women are making these decisions, and that they're supporting each other in those decisions that they're making.
Yeah, and you actually are such a good example, because you uncovered so many other things. You came in thinking that you have one thing. How quick did you discover everything else, or was it something that took a little more
It
time?
took it took a long time, actually. There was
Was it multiple doctors as well?
So yes. So for instance, I knew I had endometriosis. I had an endometrioma and fibroids. I had those taken out via lap and myomectomy in 2017. That's when I froze my eggs. And then, even though the doctor went in there and looked around with the camera, he didn't tell me that my right ovary, so my left ovary was no longer functioning because of the endometrioma, but he didn't tell me that the right ovary was stuck to my uterus, right? So it's like somebody else discovered
Oh, wow.
when I moved.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, that's a big
Yeah,
deal. Like, I actually
it
had
is a big deal.
always talked about pain on my right side and not my left. And so those are things that it's hard to see on a ultrasound or on a MRI unless somebody's looking for something that's wrong. And it took me, in my egg freezing cycle, I got an infection and I ended up being hospitalized for 6 days. And so it took them finding that there, during my
Wow.
hospital visit. And then later on, found out about that I had MTHFR. And so that took after my fourth IVF cycle, there was they started doing testing for recurring IVF implantation failure. And so that's how we found that out, that I have it from both sides, from both my mother and my father. And so we added blood thinners and Clexon onto my sixth cycle, and that's what made a big difference for me there. And so there were all of these things like that we found out along the way. Also, when I was with my partner, for instance, and he did have male factor, but nobody really acknowledged it because we were jumping right into IVF. So for them, it was like, okay, his type of male factor is going to be okay doing IVF, but there were other things, and there were ways that it could have been improved too, both from a mental perspective of like, you're in this together, and from a perspective of like, he could have changed his diet a little bit. He could have changed things with his lifestyle that could have given us a better chance. So there's all of these things and biases within the infertility community, with even doctors, of just like, let's throw what we can at it, and see what sticks.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, to be realistic, you really need to be realistic. I mean, the reality of it is that these clinics are very busy. They don't have as much time individually with every single patient that walks in the door. This is just the reality of it. Is it fair? No, but that's the reality. And it happens that things get missed, and it is only one perspective. So they only perceive one perspective of medicine because that's how they're trained. So it is important to kind of take into account, number one, it's important to be an advocate for yourself. You have to be. I feel like that's the only way to push. And also, I just truly believe, just in working with lots of women, that everybody has a really amazing intuition. That the intuition is kind of like this inner compass that will guide you and will let you know. It's kind of like this nudge. So I really do believe in that. And that usually ends up having you figure out things or uncovering different mysteries about yourself, because it's that nudge that keeps having you. It's kind of like the nudge that got you to even start this app, to really like investigate. And it's important to do that and not solely rely on the medical community. You really need to be part of this whole process.
Yeah, I think that from the very beginning, and I would say this to even women who are not necessarily considered infertile, or the single women that are walking around not knowing that they have certain things because they haven't tried to conceive yet. And so there's this big part just in gynecology in general, not even talking about reproductive endocrinologists. Like, it's just from what do we know about our body, and what's happening in there, and are the things that are happening with our cycles normal? Should we be investigating something more there? I think that a lot of us, the infertiles, when we look back at things, we really wish that we would have advocated for ourselves earlier. There were signs there, but nobody told us that we were supposed to care about them. And a lot of gynecologists, they're not fertility doctors. They're not they're not there to say, hey, this is an issue and we need to consider whether you're ever going to get pregnant and how many kids you want, and so let's investigate. They just give you birth control pills most of the time.
Well, yeah, that's what happened with me. It's the same thing, and that's how they're trained. They're trained that way. And so I say every single specialist, no matter who it is, whether it's natural medicine, conventional medicine, they all have one perspective, and everybody has blind spots. So it really is so important to look at the whole.
Yeah, it's one of those things where because we've been through something, now we know better. But there are so many women out there that don't. And so if there are young women in your life, like cousins or nieces and daughters, like, we need to be teaching them this, because they're not doing it at school. They're trying to tell you how to prevent getting pregnant, not how to stay healthy and safe, so that whenever you do choose to conceive, you'll be able to. And this is, it's obviously a problem that's growing, where we say 1 in 8 in the US, but I think it's closer to what it is in the UK, and here in Israel it's 1 in 6, and and a lot of it we don't know the 1 in 8s because we are in a society now where there's less marriage and there is less conventional trying to conceive, and so we just don't know.
Yeah, it's true. Well, this is really amazing, very interesting, and I know that a lot of my patients going through the IVF process would really benefit from, so I'm excited. This is just amazing. I think that it's great when, because you can't know it better unless you go through it. And so for actually, you going through it, that's what really helps you to understand it really from the inside out. And I think it's just amazing. I'm really excited about the research that this is going to bring and the discoveries that you're going to get. So I'm excited to follow you. So you said the next 12 months. So things are uncovering, all the things that you've mentioned. Some of them are not even like really didn't happen yet, but you guys are working on it.
Yeah, so we've only been we launched on October 23rd, so we're nearly 4 months in.
Oh, baby.
And yeah, so it's 10 days older than my son. So
oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's all happening at the same time, but there's that long-term vision. It's one of those things where you kind of got to put the cart before the horse. We need the information from the women in order to create the algorithm, but it's definitely there. I'm talking to some AI companies already that are within IVF and that are very interested in this type of information, and they mostly deal with what happens after you have treatments and you have your embryos, and which embryos are going to be the most likely to implant and become a healthy baby, where we're taking all of the information before you even get to the embryo. So how do we get to the healthier embryos that's going to do that? And so taking all of that information together so that we can have more success and less heartache.
Awesome. And then also for the alternatives like diet, supplements, and certain treatments, do you also give information on how that can affect or influence egg quality, uterine lining, things like that?
Yeah, so that's a part of our resource center, which is growing every day, and we're adding new information in. And definitely, we're looking. The only supplement that has been researched in full actual literature is DHEA. So. So we actually don't know, like we say the COQ10, and we all really love how to I'm gonna mess up the name of the book, but the egg.
Oh yeah. It starts with the egg.
Starts with the egg. Yes, we all love it. Starts with the egg, and it's kind of like our Bible. But we're hoping to be able to look at different supplements and what everybody is taking, and really seeing what makes a difference for everyone.
Yeah, and I would just kind of throw this in. This doesn't mean you should go and take DHEA. It is a hormone. It is something that you really need to go to a doctor or a specialist, and also make sure that you are deficient in it, not just something that you kind of want to throw in. Just kind of an FYI, because I do see a lot of times in the message boards, people will suggest that, and it is something that to keep in mind that for some people it's really not the answer. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Yes, and there's different ways that you can get tested for it. If your doctor gives you, there's blood work for it, and there's also another test that I'm going to mess up the name of.
Dutch test.
Yes, there you go, Dutch testing. Yeah. I actually did the Dutch test in 2017, and it was in there, but I didn't know that I needed to pay attention to it and that it made a difference. And so later on, because it's in the literature, my clinic was like, if you're going to take a supplement, this is the only one we recommend that you take, because there's only literature about that one. And I went back and I found it in my medical records, and I was like, oh, look, I'm deficient in this. So I actually took another test today. My first postpartum.
The Dutch test, you mean?
Well, no, I did the DHEA and all of my hormonal panel and vitamin B and vitamin D and all of those really important things, because I'm trying to figure out postpartum when I'll be ready and if I am going to try again. So it is something that you should definitely get tested for, and not just take, because it can have an adverse effect if your testosterone levels gets too high because of it.
Yeah, another thing too is something maybe kind of off topic. It's more after. Something that I've noticed is people who have had IVF, because I started doing the Dutch test, they seem to have more of an elevated estrogen level because your body actually needs to detoxify estrogen. That's one of the process of detoxification and processing. And then you're given a lot of estrogen for the treatments. This is something that I kind of think is important to note. It's important to assimilate, to allow your body or assist detoxification after fertility treatments.
And
not too much. Sometimes dim. Yeah. Sometimes dim. And you could do that. I mean, there's certain things that you can't do, because you can't really mix herbs. I say sometimes milk thistle to help the liver, but you can have certain foods, certain greens to help assimilate, and lots of vegetable fiber to allow the body to process it, because you don't want too much estrogen. Sometimes it can cause a lot of other problems, as we know. And so it's important to really consider that after IVF treatments. This is something that I'm always supporting women trying to get pregnant, but till I started to see it through doing testing. So this is something just to keep in mind. DIM DIM as a supplement is good, but it could be a little too strong if you're trying to get pregnant again, because it can really lower your estrogen, which you don't want to lower it too much either. But this is just something that I kind of thought about.
Yeah, it's I had after my my egg freezing cycle, when I got sick, I had an adrenaline fatigue, and that's why I took the Dutch test. And there were things in there with your cortisol super high, and my estrogen was really high at the time. We thought that it was just because of the endometriosis, which can also cause high estrogen. But a big part for me to recover from that was to do the liver cleansing and liver detox, so that I can, your liver is what's really balancing out your hormones. And I think that sometimes that's being neglected while we're doing all of
it's such an important organ. And one thing that you can do very gently, because of course when you're going through the process, you want to go gentle. You don't want to do anything too extreme, because you're going through this whole process and it's part of the treatment. It's just something as simple as hot water and lemon in the morning on an empty stomach. In Chinese medicine, the taste for liver is sour, so it actually it supports it.
No, that's awesome. That's a good one, and I should probably do that. I need help not just with my estrogen, but elevating my B vitamin levels and folate and all of those things as well. And I know that can help.
Oh, for sure. So this is great. I love that you came on the show, that you're talking about this amazing app. And I'm very excited to check it out and see how it progresses as it grows.
Yeah, no, too. I think it's a very exciting time, and the progress that we're making already, and just how enthusiastic.
How can people find you?
So we are at embieapp.com, EMBIE app.com, and then also the same handle on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, so they can find us there. Just search Embie app in the App Store, whether you are on Google or on Android or on the iPhone. And
so thank you so much for coming on today. This was really amazing information.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have your listeners be a part of our community and to really push treatments forward.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.